Netflix's One Piece is good, but that doesn't necessarily mean you will enjoy it. In this short, spoiler-free review, I will explain the vibe and how your experience might be different based on whether you are a big fan or have never experienced any of the pirating world of One Piece. Let's get right into it. First, and this is the most important part to some, live-action One Piece is adapting the first 100 or so chapters of the manga, and it does that very well for the small amount of time it has to work with. It does make a lot of changes from the manga, but it still keeps the overall plot and characters the same. In some ways, the brevity is an improvement over its source material, as the character development and story in general is much faster paced. However, it also lost some of its charm, as we don't get as much time with the crew. Some of the arcs work very well in this abridged version, but others remove critical aspects that make it feel incomplete, especially when you know what was removed. If you know nothing about One Piece going into this, I think it still holds up on its own merits. It might be slightly overpraised because it's finally a decent anime adaptation that bothered to look at its source material, but only slightly. It's a legitimately emotional story that made me appreciate the original even more. You can't do much better than that. The characters are very well written, with Luffy being a standout. The crew gets acquainted and starts to care about each other, which makes it easy to get invested along with them. This leads to some really emotional and powerful moments lifted straight from the manga that are well earned even with the much abridged story. Although there's a lot of history with this property and a lot going on in its world, Netflix's One Piece explains all of the important aspects. A lot of the lines are the characters clearly stating what they want to do, which I really like. It works especially well in a story about goals and dreams, but it also just makes the conflicts really easy to understand. Despite the complex world, the plot is often fairly simple, which is a formula that works really well. The overall feel of this is interesting. It has a much more serious tone than the manga, but still contains some of the goofiness, which might seem a bit odd to people who haven't experienced One Piece before, and especially if you've never watched anime. The seriousness doesn't come across as edgy, and the comedy is well balanced. I would have preferred to see more of the goofy side of One Piece, but we still get a lot of it ingrained into the world through things like the over-the-top powers and transponder snails. Visually, this show looks good. Some of it can be pretty jank, but for the most part, the sets, costuming, and visual effects were solid. A lot was practical, which helped make things like Luffy's stretchy arm easier to buy, because the rest of the world is so real. Lastly, this is based on a battle shonen manga, so I have to talk about the fights. They were sweet. We get really cool flashy choreography of Zoro, Luffy, and Nami destroying random goons. And as more members are added to the crew, it only gets better. The camera work in this aspect is incredible, as it actually lingers on each shot so we can see the full fight take place. Along with the fights, I have to mention that this show is fairly violent compared to its manga counterpart. Although the manga has a ton of blood and battles, there's not a lot of death shown, and in this show, a lot of people die, get cut down, and one scene, someone even gets cut in half, which is completely visible to the audience. It does make the story more mature, but it also adds more tension to the battles that we see, because we know there's real danger of death. With a faithful adaptation to the most important aspects of the original story, along with altering it to fit the live-action medium, One Piece is about as good as you can get with this kind of adaptation. This is a great series, and I recommend watching it whether you've experienced the original story or not. Thank you so much for watching. If you want more content from me, check out my analysis of why concepts don't matter in the top card. Or you can watch my analysis of every new summer 2023 anime in the bottom card. That's all for me. Jamio.